Welcome to a time to have a look at what happened in the markets, starting off with the Asia Pacific side. Those markets closed mixed following a bounce overnight on Wall Street. Chinese mainland markets closing a little bit lower when you look at the Shanghai Composite, that down 0.5%. The Shenzhen component also following suit in negative territory, down 0.8%. Over in Hong Kong, we had the Hang Seng Index closing a little unchanged. Biggest move in that part was the shares of the tech giant Tencent. Those were down surprisingly just over 3%, and this is despite the company reporting a 65% surge in quarterly profit. However, the Nikkei bucked the territory. They're up basically 0.7% in positive territory. When we move over to the European side, slightly higher following Wall Street. And of course, key data coming out of there is Eurozone and Eurozone figures coming through, and of course, numbers coming in from the UK as well. And then US futures looking right now edging slightly higher as a result of what happened last night following those tech stocks. But to get into the actual picture, we are joined by Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital. Warwick, thank you so much for your time. Let's take stock of the week that was. I mean, if you had to review it and pick one key event that stood out for you, what would it be?
Well, I'd say the main thing was central banks meeting, both ours and, of course, the Fed. But central banks certainly had front and center stage this week, Natasha.
All right. So earlier today we've had yeah. I was saying earlier today
if we look at the Fed.
No, continue.
My apologies there. Certainly the US market seemed to pay no attention to the hints from the Federal Reserve that they might actually start tapering off. But I mean, it was far from a hard and fast threat, that's for sure. I think it was really a case of tut, things seem to be getting better, and maybe we'll have to stop buying assets sometime in the near future.
Right, so we're going to get into that conversation around taper talks or any kind of taper talks coming through maybe later on in the year. Earlier today, we had numbers coming through locally on the Sense front, whether it was famous brands and various other companies. Which of the company financials that came through caught your attention?
Right, so I see famous brands kicked out the period in which they're going to release their results. Clearly a few more things for the accountants to count up. I noticed a very strong result from Richmond. Of course, you know, they're recovering post-COVID, just I suppose, like most others to some degree. I mean, when we look at the numbers, the actual sales contracted. But what we can also see there is that the online sales grew very well, and we're also seeing a very typical post-pandemic type recovery where a certain amount of demand gets held back like a dam, and then the dam bursts and people start buying again. And that's why there was so much excitement in that share. It was quite a strong one today. It was this kind of recovery effect coming through.
Investec, did that pique your interest?
Yeah, I mean, it was a decent set of numbers there. I guess they obviously helped by the recovery in asset markets. I mean, yes, they might have unbundled the 91 asset management business, but they still cater to a market that has a lot of assets that they help look after and so on. And recoveries in that will have flowed through quite nicely. And in addition, they are astute risk managers, and I guess that now that you've had the low base formed, again, results coming off nicely from that covered low base.
I mentioned in my intro that Tencent released their quarterly figures with profit up nearly 65%, that is. Any reaction from the Naspers process shares locally?
Yeah, they have softened off, not as much. I guess you get a certain amount of dilution in the other holdings that they have, so not as high. I mean, it was quite a surprise seeing Tencent looking that weak. But it's not just about the numbers. I think it's also about the risks that they face from regulators, Chinese regulators, looking like they're taking aim at a number of tech players, even if they're relatively well-behaved ones, which Tencent tend to be.
Before I let you go, key event that you're going to be looking out for, whether it's later on today or early next week?
Right, so I'm going to be watching out for two line items on South Africa, and that is the S&P ratings announcement later tonight, and the PPI inflation on Thursday.
All right, thank you so much for your time. That is Warwick Lucas, who is from Galileo Capital. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have SME on point with Diabo Soto, and then I'll also be joining a little bit later on with Books on Point, so don't go anywhere.